Let's fucking go.
To the crisis in Afghanistan. Major developments there.
Starting off with the Taliban
drawing
first and
what
foremost.
it's calling a red line, saying it will not accept extending the deadline for the U.S. to get out of the country. That deadline exactly a week away amid the mad scramble to get Americans and American allies out. Our Ian Panel is at the airport in Kabul for us with the very latest. Ian, hello.
Yeah, TJ, good morning from Hamid Karzai International Airport. This is now the epicenter of what the president calls one of the most difficult, largest airlifts in human history. And being here, you can see why. All around us are refugees desperate to get out. And all the time, we're seeing these large military transport aircraft landing and taking off from America, from Germany, from other European and NATO countries. Although thousands of people are now being rescued and moved safely out of the country, there are still tens of thousands, just hundreds of yards from me, still desperate to get through and get out. This morning, amid mayhem around Kabul's airport, evacuations are ramping up. With the August 31st deadline to withdraw all military forces now just 1 week away, US officials reporting helicopters and troops were sent into Kabul to extract Americans and airlift them to the airport. But many Americans and thousands of Afghan allies remain. President Biden indicating the pullout could be pushed back, but the Taliban saying failure to meet the deadline will cause mistrust, claiming it's their red line.
If they are intent on continuing the occupation, so it will provoke a reaction.
Adding to the chaos, the possibility of an airport attack from ISIS-K, the branch of ISIS terrorists here in Afghanistan, who could exploit the volatile situation. US and coalition forces now moving quickly.
You see that, dude? The fucking variants, dude. ISIS-K variant. Shit's popping off, dude. Shit's popping off in Afghanistan. Once again, I am a Biden head, so obviously don't expect any serious commentary against Biden's actions. For me, I think he personally can do no wrong. He is the malarkey cutter. So, okay, all jokes aside, I do stand strong behind Joseph Robinette Biden on this decision to evacuate, as I have since the start.
WTF is a sub-anniversary
I am
message.
not one of those fucking weirdos who cares about the characters or the aesthetics of progress, but instead actual progress, like, you know, happening. And Joe Biden did provide that, and it was a brave thing to do. It really was. Of course, it was going to be chaotic, and for those of you who keep talking about like the chaos that's going on right now, the conversation should always center around why there is chaos there to begin with, or to this degree, and what our involvement was that accelerated said chaos, not necessarily what the most predictable fucking outcome was somehow you know, impossible, somehow avoidable. Okay, because it wasn't avoidable. And while my heart goes out to the people of Afghanistan who have to fucking suffer through this consequence, they've been suffering for the past 20 years without a single one of these goddamn outlets ever offering or extending any sort of serious coverage to their well-being. And now all of those people turn around and act like they just give a shit about the people of Afghanistan or the women in Afghanistan or any of that stuff. They don't. Okay? They don't. Miss me with that bullshit. You don't give a fuck. If you gave a fuck, you would be trying to, you would have tried to pull out in, you know, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. There were so many opportunities. If you truly cared about the people of Afghanistan and their well-being, you would have never wanted to go in there to begin with. America's involvement in Afghanistan has only caused more chaos. America's involvement in Afghanistan only ruined the fucking country and put it in a state of disrepair. Our involvement in all countries, whether it be Asia, whether it be the Middle East, whether it be North Africa, it's always the same fucking bullshit, okay?
Don't know.
So, Joe Biden did the right thing, and that's why I applaud him for it. I don't give a fuck if he is an otherwise imperialist asshole.
Okay.
Planes flying almost 11,000 people out over a 12-hour period Monday, more than twice the number of people evacuated in the same period Sunday. Hundreds now arriving in Virginia and dispersing to Fort McCoy, Fort Lee, Fort Bliss, and Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst. Afghan refugees forced to leave everything they know behind. Friends, families, homes, and their country. Like this man who just arrived in Seattle with his wife and 6 children. He was a translator for the US and owned a clothing business in Kabul.
It was hard, it was very hard. Just I left it everything for there. My family, my business, my house.
At Dulles Airport outside Washington, D.C., this Afghan and his family speaking with ABC's Gio Benitez. He worked for the American government for more than 2 years. This is his first time in the United States.
A lot of relief. Now I think we are safe here. Yeah.
10-month anniversary Pogu.
No, you're not, brother. No, the fuck you're not. You're a lot safer here than you would be in Afghanistan, but welcome to America, okay? Now you gotta fucking slave away for the rest of your life to get fucking health care. Still, comparably better than Afghanistan, of course, but that's not necessarily a metric for success for Americans who have been living here for their entire lives, I hope. Now you're gonna have to slave away.
11 months.
You're not gonna, your housing is always going to be insecure. Your healthcare opportunities are lackluster if you don't have money to pay for it. People are probably going to deny you jobs because I suspect there will be a lot of anti-Afghan and just like anti-Arab, anti-fucking Muslim rhetoric in America that Republicans will utilize as a talking point to, drum up support for themselves. So I hope things look good, but it's okay though. We have Uber Eats. Yeah, you mean like he's gonna do Uber Eats because his other job is not gonna be enough.
So, of course, the key question this morning, given that we're now just 7 days away from that August 31st deadline, is whether or not they're going to have enough time to get all of the people out. We're now hearing, in reporting from the Washington Post, that senior US officials are saying that the director of the CIA, William Burns, had a secret meeting with Mullah Barada, the de facto leader of the Taliban, here in Kabul on Monday. The CIA aren't confirming any details of that, but of course it would seem inevitable that they would discuss a potential extension. It seems to be at the moment, even at this increased pace, getting everyone out in the next 7 days is going to be an almost impossible task.
Well, hey, chatter who called out and said, yo, where's that W banner? I love you, okay? You're great. Thank you for reminding me. The W banner is back.
The consultations are ongoing, and of course, it is going to be an inclusive system. We are in talks, and we have a relationship, a working relationship with the Americans about the security arrangement. And
I love the Taliban commission for like, what are they? They have like a hotline to call. They have like a WhatsApp number that you can fucking text your grievances. They're so woke now, dude. They're great. It's like, hey, you guys are whipping me. Like, can you stop? They're gonna be like, no, click.
And the outside checkposts are in our control, and inside is under the control of.
Oh my God! Yeah. Oh no, this motherfucker! They found one. I was saying, like, I'm surprised at how little, like, how little interpreters and spokespersons that they were using originally were like not fucking, they were clearly like Pashtun straight out of the fucking mountain. And I was surprised that they couldn't get like one or two fucking dudes from, I don't know, Australia or the United States or fucking anywhere else. And they found him. The homie's got the fucking British accent coming out. I don't know if he's Australian or British, but
the United States forces, and they're in constant contact with one another. It is very unfortunate for people to be rushing to the airport the way they are at the moment. I think it would have been much better because we have announced general amnesty for
he could be South African too.
Everyone, the security forces from senior to the junior level. And this fear or this hysteria that has taken place is unfounded. The developments were so fast that all people were taken by surprise. And when we entered Kabul, and it was not pre-planned because we announced initially that we do not want to enter Kabul and we want to reach a political solution before entering Kabul
With my gun, so looking very submissive and breathable.
Making a joint and inclusive government. But what happened was that the security forces left and they abandoned their places, and we were forced to ask our forces to enter and take over security.
So I don't know if this is a fat Caparino or if he's being honest, because they actually didn't enter the city originally. They surrounded the city and said they're not going to enter the city, and then the security forces evacuated the city immediately. That's he is right. Like, his timeline of events are correct. So unfortunately, the Afghan government's actions, which were most likely motivated by America refusing to involve them in the negotiations process, that basically signaled to them that, like, no, we're just handing off the country to the Taliban. Like, you're done, Jack. That fear, of course, led them to escape and not want to fucking fight against the Taliban. But originally, they were not supposed to go into Kabul, and they weren't. And then when the security forces left, they were like, all right, we're going to, control the area now.
The point of intra-Afghan talks was precisely that we come to an agreement about what those rights actually entail. Sharia law is known to everyone, and there's no ambiguities about.
Oh yeah, totally, dude. So you are pro-Taliban? I've said this before, but it bears repeating. I could literally sit on this Twitch broadcast and be like, I love the Taliban all fucking day, and I would not be like a fraction as supportive of the Taliban as the United States government has been historically and still right now. You understand that, right? Like, and I'm not pro-Taliban. I do not believe that, like, Wahhabist fundamentalists who want to fucking implement Sharia law or whatever their interpretation of Sharia law is are actually good folks. They're not. They're antithetical. Their values are antithetical to everything I believe in personally. So no, I'm not pro-Taliban. As a matter of fact, I'm so not pro-Taliban that I constantly criticize America being pro-Taliban throughout history, whether it be originally arming and training them and drumming up support so that there is a mass insurrectionist movement against the USSR that would goad the USSR to invade Afghanistan, a subsequent civil war that the Taliban ended up winning, okay? And then routinely fucking fighting against the Taliban for the past 20 years, only to deliver the entirety of Afghanistan back to the Taliban in deals that took place over the course of multiple presidencies. I'm not a fan of the Taliban, because I'm not a fan of the CIA, because I'm not a fan of the State Department. I'm not a fan of American imperialism. So remember who the biggest fans of the Taliban are, okay? The biggest fans of the Taliban are always going to be the CIA, the State Department, the United States military-industrial complex. Those who put them in a position of power.
The rights of women, the rights of men, not only women, but also the rights of men and children. And right now we're at a situation that
number one worker.
That hopefully during the consultations there will be clarifications about what those rights are. Our foremost priority is discipline in our own ranks, and not enforcing laws on others, but enforcing it on ourselves first, and then giving it as an example for the rest of society to follow suit. So we are the first ones, and our members, if they are involved in such things, will be the first to be prosecuted. Well, I don't think people believe we are terrorists. I think it's just the war on terror. It was just a term coined by the United States. And anyone that did not fall in line were labeled terrorists.
I mean, he's fucking right about that. It is 1000% true. Not that the Taliban would not fit that bill. Like, they're not good people. They're bad people. Okay? Sorry. They're fucking psychos. However, the coining of terror and the designation of terror by state actors against any sort of like militant insurrectionist movement is absolutely a political one. This is not a controversial take. This is not a controversial take at all. I can't believe I'm like talking about the Taliban and also clicking on Dan Crenshaw talking about the Taliban God damn it, it's like fucking 8/21 all over again. I should just like wait until August is over. We will kill you, Congressman says U.S. should reject Taliban threats over August 31st deadline. Pro-Taliban socialist who exploits American children, stealing their mom's credit cards to buy a $3 million house. Dude, that's a really good... You fucking nailed it, dude. That's precisely what I'm doing and who I am.
Smile.
This idea that anybody who wants to, any American that wants to get to the airport can, is a flat out lie. It's been a lie for a while now. We need to send a very clear message to the Taliban. We're not negotiating about our deadline. That should be the message. We should laugh at them when they say that, oh, well, that's a red line for us. You need to be out by August 31st. No. And if you get in our way when we are extracting Americans, we will kill you. That is the only message that Biden should be delivering to the Taliban. I mean,
I'm pretty sure they understand that. Like, I don't know why Dan Crenshaw is pointing this out as though it's like a unique proposition. What, you think they don't get that? No, they get that.
Thanks, Arjan.
Like, they definitely understand that. I'm pretty sure. Didn't the Ottoman Empire rule by Sharia law? Dude, are you fucking joking? The Ottoman Empire was one of the fucking, like, gayest empires out there, dude. Are you insane? Like, literally one of the gayest. It's ahistorical. There are ahistorical claims that people will... There are ahistorical claims that people fucking talk about with respect to, like, the Ottoman Empire. And they'll apply, like, modern concepts. They'll apply modern concepts and, like, modern understandings to previous empires. And it's done by both, like, people who want to say, oh, dude, yeah, the Ottoman Empire, you know, they were very Islamic or whatever. But no, the motherfuckers were, they're Turkish or Turkic ultimately. And Islam was weaponized as a political tool, but not in the same way that, like, you know, the Ayatollah does it, you know what I mean? But more so in the, more so just as a way to, you know, continue commanding influence over the entirety of the region that was predominantly Muslim. Do you think the U.S. will try to justify invading again? No. For a lot of its history, the Ottoman Empire was, like, less religious fundamentalist than Spain or Britain. Absolutely. The Ottoman Empire famously opened its doors to Jewish immigrants or Jewish refugees that were escaping oh my God, I'm forgetting words now. Holy shit. The pogroms. The Ottoman Empire had, I mean, they taxed non-believers, right? Especially after they took over the caliphate. But they taxed non-believers, but ultimately they ultimately allowed people to practice whatever the fuck they wanted to. That's why it was, like, super diverse. Yeah, the Ottoman Empire legalized homosexuality, or rather decriminalized homosexuality in 1850, a long time before the Western world. However, even before that, homosexuality was not even, like, considered a weird thing. For the overwhelming majority of history, and unfortunately we see this as, like, from a super Western lens, but for the overwhelming majority of history, people didn't think, like, you know, fucking a dude's ass was weird. Like, that was just a thing that you did. There's also certain historians that believe that there's certain historians that literally will have talked about Sharia being first of all, Sharia is up for interpretation. Obviously, it's religious laws and whatnot, but Sharia's centralization is a post-colonial concept. That, like, Sharia laws in general were basically exactly like the way you see it in Afghanistan, where tribal leaders had a command over a region and they would have their own set of rules and their own set of interpretations. A lot of the reconciliations process in criminal justice in those tribes are actually, ironically, even more modern and more humane in certain ways, depending on what the crime is, obviously. And don't think about it right now. Don't think about it the way the Sharia interpretation right now, but, like, think about the way that, like, the reconciliation process works back in the day was actually significantly more humane than even our current draconian understanding of the criminal justice system. A lot of that reconciliation revolves around like mediation, having a conversation with one another. Like, it was so ahead of its time. What happened? A constant fucking warfare, dude. We're progressive towards Armenians? No, of course not. Of course not. Islam literally just considers homosexuality as a sin, just as drinking alcohol. Wait till they find out that thinking Jesus is the Son of God is more of a sin than homosexuality. And Quran says the Christians are the closest to Muslims. Yes, bro. Every Ottoman emperor literally fucked dudes, and also maybe even younger than men, if you know what I'm saying. Okay, so certain concepts were modernized, which is a good thing. Okay, it's good. Some things are some things were in need of a refresher. But yeah, this notion that the fucking Ottoman Empire was like not on certain aspects not more modern than like comparable empires in the same time is pure Orientalist Western interpretation of events that took place. Dude, in the two largest sects of Islam, Sunni and Shia, cheating on your spouse is punishable by death. Totally, dude. Yeah, in Turkey, a country that does not have fucking capital punishment.
My name change was approved and I got my
they
papers.
murder wives all the time, dude.
Love you, chat trans rights.
A predominantly Sunni country like Turkey, they're just always decapitating wives. It's crazy, dude. Why come here and listen to what I have to say if you're just gonna make your mind up and just live in a world full of delusion anyway? Turkey is not a good representation of Islamic countries. Yes, because we were America's dog and a Western dog for so long that they allowed us to fucking survive, partially because, we joined NATO. That's literally the reason why it's not a good representation of Islamic countries, Lamau. It's because it was it was allowed to fucking exist, unlike all of the other countries that refused to allow Western influence to continue extracting their resources, like in fucking Iran with British Petroleum, or numerous other countries that the Western imperialist forces had a hand in. And even then, Turkey had a significantly hard time modernizing because of, fat IMF loans. And they're still victims to Western imperialism in the form of like banking and whatnot, but still. Wrong, Ataturk, not the fucking NATO. Okay, Ataturk was incredibly Western. That's what I'm talking about. The foundation of Turkey was super fucking Western. Perhaps too Western, if you ask some people. Anyway, the Ottomans did lose their way towards the end, though, and they did become extreme. They killed many Arab dissidents, especially in 1800 and the early 1900s. Yeah, no, for sure. That's what happens when your fucking empire is dying. Look no further than what we are living in currently. Would you agree that Turkey was a template for neo-colonization for the U.S.? No.
But let me now turn to Afghanistan. I've met this morning with my counterparts in the G7, as well as heads of the United Nations, NATO, and the European Union. I express my thanks for the solidarity we have seen as we've stood up an unprecedented global effort. I updated our partners on the significant progress we made in the past 10 days. As of this afternoon, we've helped evacuate 70,700 people just since August the 14th, 75,900 people since the end of July. Just in the past 12 hours, another 19 U.S. military flights, 18 C-17s and 1 C-130 carrying approximately 6,400 evacuees, and 31 coalition flights carrying 5,600 people have left Kabul just in the last 12 hours. A total of 50 more flights, 12,000 more people since I updated you this morning. These numbers are a testament to the efforts of our brave service women and men, to our diplomats on the ground in Kabul, and to our allies still standing with us. And we had a productive discussion. There was strong agreement among the leaders about the evacuation mission underway, as well as the need to coordinate our approach to Afghanistan as we move forward. First, on evacuation, we agreed that we will continue to close cooperation to get people out as efficiently and safely as possible. We are currently on a pace to finish by August the 31st. The sooner we can finish, the better. Each day of operations brings added risk to our troops. But the completion by August 31st depends upon the Taliban continuing to cooperate and allow access to the airport for those who were transporting out and no disruptions to our operations. In addition, I've asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency plans to adjust the timetable should that become necessary. I'm determined to ensure that we complete our mission, this mission. I'm also mindful of the increasing risks that I've been briefed on, and the need to factor those risks in. They're real and significant challenges that we also have to take into consideration. The longer we stay, starting with the acute and growing risk of an attack by a terrorist group known as ISIS-K, an ISIS affiliate in Afghanistan, which is a sworn enemy of the Taliban as well. Every day we're on the ground is another day we know that ISIS-K is seeking to target the airport and attack both U.S. and allied forces and innocent civilians. Additionally, thus far, the Taliban have been taking steps to work with us so we can get our people out. But it's a tenuous situation. We're already had some gunfighting break out. We run a serious risk of it breaking down as time goes on. Second, the G7 leaders and the leaders of the EU, NATO, and the UN all agreed that we will stand united in our approach to the Taliban. We agreed the legitimacy of any future government depends on the approach it now takes to uphold international obligations, including to prevent Afghanistan from being used as a base for terrorism. And we agreed that none of us are going to take the Taliban's word for it. We'll judge them by their actions, and we'll stay in close coordination on any steps that we take moving forward in response to the Taliban's behavior. At the same time, we renewed our humanitarian commitment to the Afghan people and supported a proposal by the Secretary General Guterres of the United Nations-led international response with unfettered humanitarian access in Afghanistan. Third, we talked about our mutual obligation to support refugees and evacuees currently fleeing Afghanistan. The United States will be a leader in these efforts, and we'll look to the international community and to our partners to do the same. We're already seeing our allies' commitment. They're bringing to their countries the Afghans who served alongside their forces as translators or in their embassies, just as we're bringing to the United States those Afghans who worked alongside our forces and diplomats. We're continuing that effort. We're conducting thorough security screening in the intermediate stops they're making for anyone who is not a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident of the United States. Anyone arriving in the United States will have undergone a background check. And we must all work together to resettle thousands of Afghans who ultimately qualify for refugee status. The United States will do our part, and we are already working closely with refugee organizations to rebuild a system that was purposely destroyed by my predecessor. Finally, we agreed to stay vigilant against terrorist threats that have metastasized around the world. We went to Afghanistan with our allies in 2001 for clear reasons. One,
totally clear reasons. You know, nation building, right? I guess it was a fucking gigantic failure regardless.
To get the people who attacked us on 9/11 and to get Osama bin Laden. And to make sure that Afghanistan was not...
Sorry, that was to kill Osama bin Laden, and then it became nation building.
...used again as a base from which to attack the United States or our allies. We achieved that objective. We delivered justice to bin Laden more than a decade ago. But the current environment looks very different than it did in 2001. And we have to meet the challenges we face today. We run effective counterterrorism operations around the world, where we know terrorism is more of a threat than it is today in Afghanistan, without any permanent military presence on the ground. And we can and will do the same thing in Afghanistan with our over-the-horizon counterterrorism capability. Cooperation with our closest partners on our enduring counterterrorism mission will continue to be an essential piece of our strategy. In short, We all of us agreed today that we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with our closest partners to meet the current challenges we face in Afghanistan, just as we have for the past 20 years. We're acting in consultation and cooperation with our closest friends and fellow democracies. And I want to again thank all of our allies and partners around the world who have rallied in support of our shared mission. We ended the conversation today by a clear statement on all of our parts. We are going to stay united, locked at the hip in terms of what we have to do. We'll get that done. And tomorrow, I've asked Secretary Blinken to give you an update and a detailed report on exactly how many Americans are still in Afghanistan, how many have gone out, and what our projection is. So thank you again. May God bless you, and may God protect our diplomats and all those in harm's way. Thank you.
Okay. Another day, another Joe Biden moment to stand tall about withdrawal, not getting fucking bullied. He looks a little old, whatever, doesn't fucking matter. Still withdrew out of Afghanistan. I don't know what I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what the bill's going to look like. I don't know how he plans to tax corporations. I don't know how he plans to tax the wealthy. Good ideas overall, ideas that I'm totally on board with. However, I don't know what the Democratic Party is going to do. I don't even think he knows how that's going to happen regardless. So we're going to start with the life as a spy inside of Al-Qaeda.
As well as bomb making, the first mistake is your last mistake. You're not going to live to make another mistake. And therefore, you have to be absolutely careful. You know, one wrong word, you know, and you are a head shorter and 6 feet under. Of course, I didn't wake up one day and said to myself, I'm going to be a spy. Just as I didn't wake up one day 4 years earlier and told myself I'm going to become a terrorist. You know, you just slip into these things, I think, unconsciously. It all started when I was 16. I was, of course, at the time residing in my home country, Saudi Arabia. I was more or less a religious student, but of the rebellious nature, if you see what I mean. So I decided, and I have no idea what took over me, to go and fight in Bosnia. That was in the year 1994. I was only 16. The idea of going and fighting the war in a foreign country that was seen as defensive, in the defense of, you know, defenseless civilians, I would say, that was in itself honorable. I think I wanted to be part of history, part of making it and shaping it, rather than being a spectator.
How were you then recruited by Al-Qaeda?
By the end of the conflict in Bosnia, one of Osama bin Laden's senior associates, the well-known mastermind of 9/11, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he actually visited Bosnia. He was looking for talent among the veterans of the jihad in Bosnia to recruit into the ranks of Al-Qaeda and to bring them into Afghanistan. For example, you know, he recruited many of the future leaders of Al-Qaeda, Ramzi bin Shib, two of the 9/11 hijackers. He told me that for the next war, for the next jihad, you need to be better trained militarily. The training camps in Afghanistan were reopening again, and it's better that you go there for training, and so I did.
And is it here that you meet Osama bin Laden?
Yes, I mean, my first meeting of Osama bin Laden is not exactly, you know, the first impression that people will have when you mention.
Motherfucker just like casually being like, yeah, I met with Osama bin Laden. It was crazy. You know, he's a guy. He's great at slam dunking. He's very good. You know, basketball. On the basketball court, he's a demon. You know, everybody knows this. It's crazy.
The name Osama bin Laden.
He's a big weeb. He never stops talking about JoJo. I'm always saying to him, hey, Osama, stop talking about JoJo, okay? He's like, no, you know, part 1 is actually not that bad. I keep telling him, part 1 is dog shit, Osama. You know this. You know this.
The first time I met him was just when he arrived to Afghanistan from Sudan in summer of 1996. He, along with the rest of Al-Qaeda, they were escaping from Sudan with their lives, and they looked like refugees. They looked disheveled, and he was wearing creased robes, and his headscarf was in a bad state. And so the first impression wasn't great in terms of the appearance, but the way he spoke, I think, was quite powerful. He was soft-spoken. That is something that everyone who met him will agree on. That he wasn't someone who gave the impression of being power hungry, power crazy, or someone who would go on to commit atrocities. You would think basically that he is, a quiet, shrewd businessman who, certainly have goals and ambitions, and he wants to fulfill. That's how he would come across to you, and also he would come across as sincere, not someone who's trying to sell you something by deception or by trying to employ underhanded tactics. No, you really feel that he believes in that product that he is selling you. He was very clear about his aims and his goals and what he wanted to do, what he wanted to achieve. Even though it sounded like the dreams of a lunatic, nonetheless, this lunatic would, in 5 years' time, change the course of history. One thing I remember about Osama bin Laden is that he was able to read people. I mean, he would look at me and he would think that, you are not a commander's type. Young, bespectacled, nerdish, bookish boy from Saudi Arabia. You're not going to make it into the, elite urban warfare unit of Al-Qaeda. However, he thought of a better use for me, and he sent me to Al-Qaeda's WMD, Research and Development Unit. And every day we wake up, from dawn all the way until mid-afternoon. That is where we are learning, and sometime either experimenting in blowing up new kind of explosives we are trying to perfect, or unfortunately testing, the latest batch of poisons or chemical weapons on poor rabbits.
At this point, do you consider yourself a terrorist?
When we started talking in details about the usage of the weapons we were constructing there, these are bombs or chemical, gas devices to be left on trains, inside cinemas, nightclubs. These are civilian targets, and this is why we have the indoctrination lessons, the religious ideological indoctrination, in order to tell us that there are no civilians as far as our enemies are concerned. There are no civilians. So we have to redefine what a civilian is, to the point where we come to the conclusion that if you pay taxes in the West, and if you go and vote at the voting booths, then you are electing your government, which basically sanction the bombings against Muslim countries and populations, sanctioning the siege against Iraq and the killing of many hundreds of thousands of young children, or so the propaganda was at that time. So that is why we ended up coming to the conclusion, which is a twisted conclusion, I would say, that there are no civilians as far as the West is concerned.
What was the trigger for helping you realize that this has gone too far?
I think the first time I realized that I was in the wrong place with the wrong people at the wrong time in history was in early August of 1998. I woke up to the news that the American embassies in Nairobi, in Kenya, and in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania were razed to the ground by vehicle bombs designed and driven by Al-Qaeda members, our fellow Al-Qaeda members. It was the first ever atrocity committed by Al-Qaeda. It was the first. It was the opening salvo of this war that they were telling us we were preparing for against the Americans. Details were coming that, in fact, it was an embassy that 220 plus innocent people from Kenya, from Uganda, and from Somalia were killed at that attack because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. 150 were blinded for life. The total number of people who were wounded exceeded 5,000. The reason is because the device was so big, but also they embedded thousands of shrapnels within the device to maximize, the number of casualties, which wasn't excusable because the target is the embassy. You want to destroy it. Why you want to harm every single one who is in the vicinity? What we are doing here is no longer the acts of revolutionaries or insurgents. It's more or less pure terrorism. When I went to the de facto mufti of Al-Qaeda at that time and asked him the question whether, how can we justify this? I said to him, I remember that, look, I'm not doubting anything, but I want to be at peace in my heart that we did the right thing, because it's just 220 people dying in order to get at 12 Americans, and these 220 had nothing to do with what America is doing in Saudi Arabia. So his answer was quite chilling. I mean, he said, look, we have all this justification that if the enemy is hiding among civilians, then we have the right to go and kill them, even if it means the killing of these civilians, and then God will sort them out. I mean, he went as far as, saying that, after all, they are a bunch of Africans who care. I made the conscious decision to leave, and I just waited for the right moment to go. I mean, I already had the perfect excuse. I had a medical condition that I needed to go and leave Afghanistan in order to get it treated. I left in December of 1998, just 3.5 months after the atrocity, and through some some incredible circumstances, I ended up in the lap of the British intelligence.
Can you tell us how you were turned by the British?
It so happened that I went to Qatar in order to just regroup and to think where to go from there, and to decide what next to do with my life, that I now left Al-Qaeda. I remember on the aircraft from Peshawar to Doha in Qatar, I was even recanting and renouncing my oath of allegiance to Al-Qaeda. I just wanted to be out, and I didn't want to continue with them. When I went to Qatar, I ended up actually being detained there. However, those who detained me in Qatar, the authorities there were extremely kind, and they were more or less understanding of my circumstances, especially after I explained that actually I was leaving. They told me that while they admire my idea that I wanted to go to university, basic study history and become a teacher in the future, that while it is noble and nice and wonderful that you want to turn your life around, there is a catch here, which is that Qatar is a very small country. So the reality is that you will end up, I will end up meeting my former associates on daily basis, in mosques or shopping centers. And therefore the objective of hiding away from them, is more or less gone out of the window altogether. And so they suggested that I should be more or less protected and utilized by a much bigger agency in a bigger country that will understand, the value of what I would be able to do, and then take it from there. And so that is why I more or less found myself accepting. On the same day, I had to say either yes or no. I said yes. On the same day, I was on a British Airways flight to London.
What was your mission?
I think the question should be, what wasn't my mission? There were so many tasks. You see, when you are a spy, within an organization like Al-Qaeda, in a place like Afghanistan, which was a black hole. By the way, Afghanistan was literally the black hole of telecommunications in the entire globe at that time. It was even more disconnected than North Korea. There were no landlines, and there were no mobile phones. The only way you can transmit information to the outside world is by going out. And therefore, your task is to absorb everything around you. So, you are learning about the camps, locations, the number of people attending, the names, aliases, the breakdown in terms of demographics, ethnicities of people coming in, nationalities of people coming in, their ages, where they come from, what are their aims. And then when you come out, you spend...
There is no fear with him talking about stuff like this now because it's too late, dude. Fucking Osama's dead, bro. What are they going to do?
Literally, hundreds of hours putting it back together from your mind, from your memory, and reconstructing it again for the benefit of the intelligence services.
Were you nervous?
Okay.
What's Osama going to do, bro? Haunt him in his dreams? You know what I mean?
This question so many times. Were I nervous? One thing you should know about espionage, as well as bomb making, the first mistake is...
What the fuck? One thing you should know about the bomb making.
Last mistake. You're not going to live to make another mistake. And therefore, you have to be absolutely careful. One wrong word, and you are a head shorter and 6 feet under. If you are nervous, it will show. It will show. When you go there, before you reach there, you really convince yourself that you are back to that old persona, that you are a genuine, West-hating, bloodthirsty jihadist, and you have no qualms whatsoever about killing all of those who stand in our way. You bury your nervousness so deep in order to make sure that it doesn't show on my face. I remember in 1999, in one of the camps, I was in the kitchen, there were other people, but then I realized that the people around me were leaving towards the door behind my back. I didn't know why, but then before I wanted to turn around and look around and see why, I distinctly felt the end of a pistol against my spine. I distinctly heard the voice of one of our fellow jihadists in the camp, menacingly uttering these words, "Now it's over, give it up, we know who you are, you know who you're working for, it's over. Now you have to come with me quietly." If he said the British or mentioned specific, organization, I would be really nervous, possibly even, I don't know, maybe faint, because I know what fate, will befall me. But because the accusations were so random, I realized that this is actually one of the tactics they taught us about, which is to have random checks. So I turned, around, told him in no uncertain terms, lower your weapon. It is forbidden, explicitly forbidden, to point a gun at a fellow jihadist. And I won't tolerate this joke. So the ferocity, with which I confronted him with, more or less took him aback, lowered his weapon, and asked for forgiveness, that it was his duty, and my name was on the list. After he left the kitchen, even though it was November in Afghanistan, it was started to snow, I was sweating buckets.
Can you tell us about anything that your intelligence that you gathered stopped?
One of the things about spying against a big organization like Al-Qaeda and being involved with multiple cells is that your information, lead either directly or indirectly to the prevention of terrorism. But in some cases, the plot is so advanced that, you end up being part of it. Why? Because, I was an explosive expert. Being an explosive expert within Al-Qaeda means that other cells will come and seek your help and expertise. So this happened already in a plot in order to attack the subway system in New York in 2003. So I was more or less part of that plot. I was asked for help and I provided the help, but in exchange for that help I was able to more or less understand the outline of the plot, the participants, and the direction where the plot was taking place. It was disrupted in the end. Also, there was a plot in 2005, not far away from where we are recording this in Canary Wharf here, as well as the city and Mayfair, to poison the car handles of luxury car brands. And the idea is that if you want to attack the elite of the bankers and the hedge fund managers, that would have been the right thing to do. This cell sought my help in 2005, and they were already obtaining the materials to put the poisons together. That was disrupted. The leader of the cell escaped Britain before he was caught, and in later years he became one of the senior bomb makers for ISIS in Iraq and Syria, just to show how serious that plot was.
Obviously, eventually you discovered you were a spy, or Al-Qaeda, angry with you.
Given the fact that I caused the death of at least one or two of their senior leaders in Saudi Arabia, and I have no regret about that, they resisted arrest. I would say yes, they are angry, enough to try to kill me twice, once in 2009 and one in 2016. It's a badge of honor as far as I'm concerned. All I did, everything in my life, even when I went to Bosnia, was to protect. It wasn't my intention to go out to the world and harm people. I jumped ship as soon as the first atrocity took place. Like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or any other terror organization, are the true enemies. Betraying them is an act of honor, not an act of dishonor.
That's crazy. I thought you said he was dead. I never said he was dead. I'm just, actual quality Unilad content. I know things have gotten crazy out here, dude. Unilad is out here pumping good shit. Allah is testing you. TikTok are the list things men shouldn't be allowed to have.
There are some more things I think should be for the girls only, not the guys. Number 1, lowercase letters, self-explanatory.
Okay, that's bullshit. That's fucking bullshit.
Sorry. Number 2, blankets. Those aren't for you. Number 3, silverware. Why would you need that? Number 4, running water. Aren't you supposed to be like a man? Like, figure it out.